for the MagPLUS. These are the tubes that we started with the 9500 and then quickly released all the different versions we would need. The 9700 being similar to the 95, they're the flanged. You just have more liners and electrodes. The 84 and 85 being the wafer style, where you remove those flanges and you just have that sandwich between flanges. And then the 9600, which is our sanitary applications, where its parts are selected, especially for FDA compliance. An important note about any of these styles is when you are selecting a model code, we have 2 shipping programs to help you out. One is the modular stock program, which involves configurable parts sitting on the shelf at the factory. So you have certain options, and then it would give you a 2-week lead time that come from that stock on the shelf. So if you can work with your representative and make sure you're choosing something, so that way it can be much more like it's on our shelf. And then in addition to that, even faster is the quick ship. Now this is already configured material, so we're trying to tell you what we have ready to go right now. And that list gets updated every day. So whichever representative you're working with, make sure you're choosing mag tubes that both fit your application, whether or not it's liners and electrodes or insertion styles, but also can be shipped to you quickly, especially in this time of global shipping delays. To review the tubes themselves, this is the 9500. It is our basic water tube, conductive fluid. It's got a hard rubber liner, so we're not dealing with anything too corrosive, but it also has our drinking water certification, so like our NSF and others. So this is where we really got the bulk of where we're going to put a magnetic flow tube, either all the way down to 1 inches, all the way up to 80 inches. And you've got some electrode choices. You can choose Hastelloy, that's actually a standard for us, and swap between stainless steel, and then you can up the cost a little bit for titanium, depending on what your process is. These tubes can work with any of our transmitters, so when I get into the transmitter capabilities, just remember the tubes can do any of the things. They can work with any transmitter. So again, this is our base level. It is very excellently priced, and you can get it IP68 if you're putting it down a well, bidirectional flow metering, all the sorts of noise canceling, and with the IMT33, virtual grounding that you might need. But again, basic, easy to use tube, flanges on it. Next up is the 9700. So again, flange tube, but now you've added in all the liner capabilities and all the electrode options. So you have your PTFE or PFA. We also added ETFE. So we found that in specs, PTFE was being called for, but was kind of being upcharged as a brand name. So to give you the same capabilities of chemical resistance and also hardness, we found ETFE, and that can make sure we keep that cost down while still meeting your chemical capability needs. You'll also see that the electrodes, we get into those tantalum and platinum versions, but we also have some options that you might not have had before, such as the tungsten carbide coated electrode. So now you can get into some pulp and paper applications and other high solids applications where you've got a tungsten carbide coating. You're going to last decades. You know how long these mag tubes last. And you're going to have a tungsten carbide coated, which really lowers that noise potential from the solid while giving you that long life. This tube also works again with the IMT33, so you're adding in that virtual grounding, which we'll get into, and also the high solids up to 70%. It really is an excellent tube choice. Moving on to our wafer styles, I'm not going to dive in to all the details on here other than, yes, the wafer styles work with all of the transmitters. And then this is the PFA line, and then this is the ceramic line. So you can get very small with that metering capability, down to 1/10 of an inch with our ceramic line there. The cermet electrodes is a certain type of fused in place there, but then there's the platinum ends up being a pretty standard choice for the ceramic and smaller wafer style. This has some of the FDA approvals there, especially for those very tiny applications that might need some of the approvals for the pharmaceutical world. It does say food and beverage, but this isn't necessarily the tube you'd want to go to for a food process. That tube is the 9600. You can see here, we've got some end connections that are, the 3A certified. You can get into a lot of the choices that are all built around, instead of that chemical robustness, it's built around being approved for any of your applications that you need. So FDA, 3A, etc. Again, works with any of our transmitters. So there's a lot of capabilities that the transmitters add that can be featured into our sanitary tube here. And then making sure the tube itself fits your process and what you need here. Transmitter overview. So any of these transmitters work with any of the MagPLUS tubes. It's going to be the IMT30, which is a very base model, the 31, kind of the workhorse and does everything that a transmitter plus a couple diagnostic features. And then the 33, and I want to get into that because, you know, sometimes people think of that higher end one, well, we don't need that accuracy, but there's a couple features there that might save you a ton of time and money and spec costs. So for the transmitters, we've got the IMT30, that basic model. It gives you a display. It's got the 4-20, a little bit of heart. You can't reconfigure a lot on it, and you're not dealing with the hazardous area approvals for it. It is a base model transmitter that gets your tube working. The 31 is that mid-tier, that workhorse. It meets pretty much whatever spec you've seen written out there in the field. It's got your hazardous area certs. You can get it either compact on the tube or wall-mounted remote to the tube. Generally, we suggest wall mount just to make the spares easier, so you're not rewiring an entire tube situation. High accuracy and a lot of diagnostics on board. That last one is the IMT33, so it's a little bit of a bigger shape. But we've added some big things here where not only are you getting more communication protocols there, that's kind of a nice to have, but you're also adding in the 70% solids capability with the 33 and the virtual grounding capability. As a note, all three of these tubes, make sure you're choosing the right one to again fit into the modular stock, which is that 2-week, or the quick ship, which is that overnight. So the IMT33, again, that up to 70% solid content. That's something you used to only be able to do with your IMT96. So if you knew about the IMT96 and its AC driven coils, this one's still a DC driven, but you're getting up to that 70% solid content with your high accuracy. So virtual grounding, this is that feature I've been talking up. It's where you take normally to get rid of the static noise in a process. If you're not grounded to the pipe, then you have the grounding rings. You can see that on the left, where you've got a upstream and a downstream grounding ring to make sure none of that static noise is interfering with the electromagnetic signal that we're trying to pick up with the tube. With virtual grounding, microprocessors have gotten fast enough to be able to listen to the static and mathematically wipe it. So you're not dealing with trying to ground the process, deal with any transients that your plant might have, and installation becomes much easier. This also halves the number of leak points you might have. So instead of gaskets on either side of your grounding rings, now you can have that pipe nice and sealed to the flow tube, and your virtual grounding with that conductive fluid lowers your cost there. It also removes that need for, say, if you had to get weird with your grounding rings like tantalum or any other materials other than stainless steel. Now you don't have to worry about what's eroding your grounding ring. Some people were still choosing stainless steel and just replacing them every now and then. This means you're leaving that pipe connected in there, virtually grounded, you're trusting the grounding on it. And so even though it feels like you've bought a little more with the higher end transmitter, you're saving so much in installation and worries about your grounding later on. So just remember virtual grounding. It's an important feature that we can't really add on the lower end transmitters. They don't have the microprocessor power to do that. As you know, we've done magnetic flow tubes for a long time as Foxboro. All of these in this year are going away. So the 8000 series, which is that older wafer style, the ceramic, the PFA line, the 2800 and 8300, which were all they were old enough that they were flanged meters, but did not meet the ISO lengths. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then your more standard tubes, the 91, 92, and 9300, those are all phasing out. We are meeting those capabilities, so we need to move away from trying to build older equipment. That's getting harder and harder to source boards, and honestly, when you've updated the electronics, moving to the next thing is better. Same is true for IMT25 and IMT96. So that's going to get more important because that was where a remote unit could be swapped for spares, but the 25 and 96 are in their last time buy protocol now because for the same reasons the older tubes are. We need to move away from the older product And you'll find the newer product is priced significantly better. As a guide, you can see we're meeting those older tubes with just a couple of the newer tubes capabilities. You don't need the full line to meet them. So we really added some capabilities with the MagPLUS line. So that 8000 series, again, fits right into the 84 and 85 wafer style. And then the flanges on the 28, the 83 meet up to the flange style of 9700. Some of the older tubes, people would standardize on the platinum iridium style. Just remember, you've got more choices than just platinum for 9700. You could go platinum again, but maybe you could go tungsten carbide and save some costs there. Also remember to, when you're updating product, the newer products have that modular stock and quick ship capability, whereas the older product, we're building it for you. We can get you spares if you need them, but we'd really like to help you have a more robust supply chain using our modular stock and quick ship program. For the transmitters, the IMT25 and 96 work with all those older styles, and then the newer MagPLUSs can't necessarily just swap out for the older ones. So if you have an older tube, the easiest spare to work with, what those calibration factors that are printed on the tube are built for, are the older transmitter styles. The newer ones, the 30, 31, and 33, can work with any of the newer MagPLUS tubes. But let's talk a little bit more on what that means to swap it out. And remember that new capability, that virtual grounding, that's only a new transmitter capability. When you're swapping out the 2800 series especially, that longer lay length than the standard ISO could be a problem for what exists out there. We wanted to make that easier. So we can give you a spool piece with your 9700. So the 9700 has all those liner choices that the 2800 has. Well, now you can also just select either a carbon steel or a stainless steel pipe piece to make sure that that 9700 fits in the same hole that that 2800 came from. The 9300 is already the ISO length, so the 9700 fits exactly where it belongs. But we are stocking these spool pieces to make that as easy of a swap as possible, since we know how much installation can be a problem. And to talk a little bit about retrofit, if you have a pipe in place that you really can't remove, it's covered in insulation, it's just too harsh of a process, you've got to fill out too many forms, you can take a newer IMT31 and 33 and retrofit it onto an older tube. You do need a known flow rate through that tube, whether or not you use a historian, the valve open percentage, whether or not you have an additional flow meter on the line, depending on the accuracy of that flow meter. We want to make sure you can retrofit, but then also have an accurate line. It's not an easy backwards compatible. You're not pulling this out of the box, installing it, and you're done. There's still that extra step to make sure you get the calibration factor right, but it is possible. We have a few instructions on it, and we also have a couple white papers on places we've done this already. But otherwise, I want you guys to feel comfortable asking me any questions later, and make sure you can reach out to your rep. We have a very clear path for how to upgrade these, and I'll talk to you soon.